So I just had a conversation with a realtor friend of mine who I just met, somebody new starting out in the business. Um, Something interesting came up in the conversation. We talked about sphere of influence. So, of course, all the education and everything teaches that you got to hit your sphere of influence. Everything's about your sphere of influence. If you're not farming that, then you're not doing it right. Now, this applies to real estate. This applies to like any sales field. But I want to debunk that, man. I feel like that's a myth. Now, I know there's a lot of gurus and folks who would come out of the woodwork and say that I don't know what I'm talking about, but let me explain to you. 9 times out of 10, your sphere of influence is not going to be the basis of building your business. Now, part of the reason of that is the context of your relationship prior to you entering this sales field. Like, for example, they might have known you as a teacher or known you as something else for a long time. And when you now take off the mantle and say, I'm a real estate agent now, or I'm in direct sales or whatever, automatically you don't have the credibility you would have entering into that relationship context as that role you're going into. So with that being said, a lot of people have an aversion towards farming their sphere of influence because of the fact that they don't want to feel salesy or things of that nature. And I think that's a very grounded fear and a grounded cognitive bias to have, because think about it. If you haven't maintained that relationship and then you're coming into it and you're saying, hey, I just want you to know I do this now, that might not necessarily be within the context of the relationship you had. So a little background about me. My first deals did not come from sphere of influence. I know there's a lot of folks on here who have uncles and brothers and cousins and coworkers and stuff willing to work with them. When I first started, I didn't necessarily have a sphere of influence that I could necessarily lean on to help build my business. The good in that is that now I have a pretty wide sphere of influence from past clients and, all the experiences I've had from this role. So now my sphere of influence is completely shaped different than it was when I was an aircraft mechanic all those years back. Aircraft mechanic does not necessarily directly translate to trust me with your real estate transaction. Now, that is not to say that I hadn't had a few people from my old career field utilize me to some degree for education or to handle a transaction for them, but it didn't come right away. It wasn't instant. It wasn't like, right off the bat, hey, I got my license. And they're like, great, give me your card. I'm going to use you. It did not happen that way. I actually didn't start to actually see any residuals from those relationships until about a year after I've been in, the field full time. So that is to say, if you're struggling to find business and you are really, averse to hammering out your sphere of influence, if your brain tells you that the sphere of influence doesn't necessarily contain the type of clientele that you need, be it, who knows, maybe they're a bunch of renters and, I don't know. All I do know is if you feel as if your sphere of influence isn't something that you can directly farm, you're probably not wrong. And obviously stay in touch with these folks, because your sphere of influence will naturally start to gravitate towards you after you've established yourself in the real field, after they see that you're eating and you're doing right by people and you have a quality product, or whatever the list is. Once you've established that, that's when that old sphere kind of comes back, because while you're transitioning from one role to another, your sphere doesn't recognize you as the professional you're striving to be. So because that was an interesting conversation, I thought I would share. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Please put it in the comments. I would love to have conversations about it. But the books and all the gurus that talk about your sphere, no, it's just not that way for everybody. Some of us don't come from influence and money and having, if you sell jacuzzis and you worked at Kmart, you're probably not going to be selling a bunch of jacuzzis to your old Kmart buddies yet. Like maybe down a year after some time has passed and people have made some moves, maybe then, but not out the box. please don't bump your head too hard against sphere of influence. Understand that as you're performing your duties, doing your job, and becoming a better professional, you're going to grow your sphere of influence into the sphere that the books talk about. So find business the way you find business now. Good luck to you. And just understand, maintaining those relationships is important, but it is not going to be the make or break for the starting of your new business. I'm Brandon Harris. I wish you all the best luck. I hope you have a great, productive week. I'm out.